Hello, everyone,
Hi.
and welcome to the technology panel. I am Mrs. McSpaz. I'm going to be the moderator. I didn't even think about how I'm actually going to intro this. Wow. Okay. So the technology panel here. Original idea was to talk about streaming technology and a little bit more behind the scenes, as Justin put it, as we were doing our quick little pre-brief, just a brief, I guess, to kind of go beyond the veil so that people get an idea that it's not as simple as it looks. We just make it look easy. And also, the questions that we have been receiving within our Discord channel have been predominantly about the technology amidst the pandemic and everyone moving to virtual tabletop, or at least implementing technology at the table. So we're going to be having a twofold conversation here. Gonna start off with tech at the table, but firstly, we will introduce everyone here. So let's haha! I aimed at the right spot.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jay. You may know me as Lord Gazumba on my Twitch channel. I've been playing same D&D campaign for 41 years, but as far as technology goes, I started streaming in May of 2018. So we're going to be approaching that 3-year mark, and I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes, had some help along the way, and I think this is a great forum to discuss some of those experiences. So thank you for having me.
Next, folks, hi, I'm Jimmy, owner and operator of Praetor Rejects on Twitch here. Started in 2016 streaming, and we specifically are a VTT channel, where these other two are your real tabletoppers. So, but yeah, look, very excited to be able to join us since Reaper's in my backyard. I'm just south of y'all in Capel. I got to come up there and visit sometime. So, but yep, that's who I am.
If we're going counterclockwise here, I am Frank. I think I've been streaming for a little over 2 years on Twitch, and yeah, we stream rather than VTTs. We do stream tabletop with cameras and miniatures, and play D&D, and that's honestly how I play with my friends too on our home games now since the pandemic has begun.
Justin,
Hi.
you have an icon. Yep.
I see that. Most of you know me as the disembodied voice. I am, actually. I'm not used to actually being a part of the content, usually just making the content work. But I am Justin Elliott. I work for Reaper, of course, as the technical director. We started on YouTube, and then we moved to Twitch. We've been streaming on Twitch now for about 2 years, actually. I think probably about the same amount of time, Frank. Roughly, give or take. But outside of that, I mean, it's pretty much just anything that gets put out media-wise that moves, that isn't just a picture, then it usually went through my hands. So.
And then a little bit more about myself. I have been brought into all of this through Frank. Hey, I'm getting good at this. I actually got a bachelor's degree in media production and also happen to love D&D. So whenever there was a notice that Frank and Anne with Nightheart Gaming were looking for people, somebody pointed them in my direction, and I was like, yes,
Please.
I love both of these things. So
Awesome.
yeah. So I believe we are going to get started with tech at the table, starting off with things that people are generally interested in, and then from there we will evolve into our behind the veil.
And get geeky.
So, yeah. Yeah, it was told to not shy away from jargon, so...
Try not to put you to sleep then. So.
Yeah, that's our new goal. We'll have to say it with oomph, like when we talk about, you know, Blackmagic Design switchers, they're the greatest thing. You know, we have to put some.
Stream Deck.
I mean,
Wait
you say
me up.
Blackmagic Design is they are entry level production level, like
Yeah.
entry level Yeah, I've only had a couple sips of my coffee, but yes. Okay, so I am monitoring Twitch chat and the technology panel channel through the Reaper Virtual Discord. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them out. I will look for them, and we have already got 3 questions from yesterday and today on the Discord. One of them, I guess I'll just start going down the list. This first one is from JB Talloway on Discord, and Reaper John just asked a question. I got distracted. JB Talloway on Discord. This one is a little bit more towards Jimmy, since it is specifically VTT. What is your preferred VTT for TTRPG? So
I drink the Kool-Aid of Fantasy Grounds. So let's just be legit. But we do have some Roll20 and D&D Beyond content on the channel from a couple of the DMs that participate in what we do on Praetor's Rejects. But for myself, it was a true Fantasy Grounds startup from the very beginning. So
and I will say my personal home game, we use Roll20. Doing the entry level Roll20, it's free, it's great. But if you try to go anything beyond modules and everything, it is a pay for the system, and as people being from book moving to VTT, it's really hard to pay for the assets twice. But
try 3 times.
I was going to say there's 3 times, right?
Yeah. So luckily with the Fantasy Ground side, I have the ultimate version, and all our DMs run that, and then that means all the players get access to the content for free. And so all of them run the demo version, and it doesn't cost anything. Now they still have to be on the table to see all that, you know, so we have to have the tables running. But from there, my players and those that participate don't pay a cent for participating, other than dealing with me. So
yeah, there's a price for everything,
which is a price. Yes.
Fantasy Grounds has one thing that I'm shocked that happened in the last year and a half, and that was, if anyone knows who Celestian is, Mike Wilson, they actually have what's called Classic D&D on Fantasy Grounds. It is basically 2nd edition D&D programmed into it. So they have 2nd and 5th edition. They have modules that are in that edition. They have kit books, and so they really did a wonderful job. And there's always old new content going into it, and it was something that was very surprising, at least to me, that Wizards allowed that. And
he spearheaded that pretty much exclusively, didn't he, Jay, to bring that to Fantasy Grounds? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was wonderful.
And they cover mini systems too. Well, it's not just D&D or fantasy. Even there's sci-fi and other systems covered in.
Aliens just came on board for Free League, so a
there
lot of platforms to choose from. Yeah, there's plenty of
other ones out there too. Plenty. I mean, I know Troller Games is working with a new one that just came out.
Foundry.
Kickstarter.
That's not Foundry's not it.
There's another one.
I forgot the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
along with Cobalt Press is involved with that, and a couple other manufacturing groups are involved with that VTT. The name is escaping me for the moment, Jay. Yeah, I'll look it up here in a second.
Berestor is saying that they use map tools, which they using map tools like a caveman. And Work Robot Work is draw your own as an option on Roll20, which yes, and there are also, as VTT is getting more popular, there are places that work specifically just for building the battle map for you to put in.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer in this, so let's just be clear on that. And I hate getting when I hop onto a Facebook group or that, and I see I'll take the Roll20 Fantasy Grounds War. I don't have time for that, because it's what you're using that works for you and your group. End of story. So you find it, stick with it, make it work, and enjoy the game. Plain and simple.
My first VTT was Microsoft OneNote.
Amazing. There is no wrong answer.
No. What's amazing is that, though, a lot of DMs use like Roll20 just for maps, right? And then they're theater of the minding the game, or they're playing the game kind of like Frank and I would if they had the miniatures out on the table. And so there's a lot of different uses. You don't have to, make it in its entirety, the entire, setting and game that you're playing. You could just utilize parts of it as well. So, yeah.
So I don't mean to step in. So I think we're chatting about, the platform we use on our show. As we've got Fantasy Ground sitting there, and I'm watching chat too, so I don't want to step in front of you and the questions here. But we use a plethora. Mainly, it's a Discord for the audio side, except for Frank. We'll get into what we use for our production on Vmix and how that works with the video and audio production side. But for your games, we'll be using Discord. We've got VC, Zoom, Skype. I mean, the question is going to be, what is the best setup for your players because of those technical issues that they will all have in some form or fashion when they're trying to connect up to your game. Then from there, you've got to decipher all that and be the technical whiz also, other than just the DM. Now you've got to try to solve your players' problems also. So,
Yeah, it's very much, in my opinion, it's very much on the people you work with, because I am late 20s and my home game, we're all in our 20s and we all live on Discord. So even though we're playing on Roll20, we are talking and using the voice and potentially video sometimes through Discord, as well as the Spotify integration for Discord listening parties. Because we're not streaming, we don't have to worry about DMCAs or any of that stuff, so it's just
another level of stuff to deal with.
Yes, another.
Which we'll get that into
Thank you.
in the later portion.
Copyright claim. Oh.
But yeah, so there's a plethora of options available, and it completely depends on your group and the comfortability. Is that even a word? I'm pulling of
Sure.
It doesn't seem like a word to me at the moment, but I'm pretty certain it is, of your group.
Well, we'll make them up today. It works.
Yep. Okay. So then other ones are typically also on finding that Roll20 is easier and cheaper than wrestling with scheduling people to show up in person. That is GM Yuri on Discord. Something kind of talked about as we've evolved from the first question. And it's really, getting people to be on a computer instead of having to deal with travel time is always.
You can thank COVID for what we're doing. I mean, at least in the aspect of the plethora of the VTTs and the options that are out there now, plus the conventions. And this one, plus I'm heavily involved with GaryCon, which Jay will tell you about, in producing that convention. It's even the older generations have begrudgingly, and some of them we've had to pull fighting and screaming over to the technical side because they don't, you've got your tabletop games. And I will readily admit that the in-person games are 100,000 times better than what we're doing on the VTT side. That personal interaction is paramount to what's going on in the game. And so we miss that part. So we make up for it with all the add-ons, the sounds, the effects, the viewer interactions, and those type of things that we put on the channel to try to bring some of that community feel into the channel.
With what Frank and I do, and Monster Slayer just asked a question that I think we both can answer about not. So there's a happy medium, and we both may have people in person around our table while we have people who are Zooming or Discording in at the same time playing. And Yeah, for example, or my on my special games, or with Eric Mona, and during the fundraiser, for example, you have a lot of options there. And the trick is, and I think we can talk about this later, Monster Slayer Boss, is what broadcast software to use, even if you're not broadcasting, to make it so that you can have one picture for all your people watching at a distance that can embed multiple camera angles, and it's doable.
Engage them.
Yeah, to engage them. It's very doable without using a VTT. And basically, the only difference between what I do and what you would do is I'm broadcasting it. That's the only difference. So it's something to consider. Yeah, it's very doable.
Yeah,
What do you think
I've
about that,
actually
Frank? Yeah.
got that marked down for continuing conversation in the later half, as well as we can talk for
We're gonna
non-streaming.
jump all over the place, I can tell.
Oh, it's fine.
Bouncing around's cool.
So talking more about the actual like embedding and everything, and then also on a casual, my home game, when we were in person, we had one person who called in, so even it's doable even without any kind of production stuff.
Okay, absolutely.
Which I will say, for the non-streaming, it was a Discord video chat, and essentially my husband, the DM, had a mic for the table and an overhead camera top down of our playmat, and then on a different computer that was at the table, we had a full screen of the person who was calling in, and then it was a view of the table so that he can still see everybody else. So it was really only a top down, but you can continue to mess with that with just limiting your audio inputs. And if you've already incorporating like people using D&D Beyond on character sheets, or putting their character sheets on their computer to control, just getting extra like little webcam inputs to get other angles as well. Just group voice chats. And then going into more of the embedding and stuff, we will circle back. So, and a thing that I mentioned with the using your computers and stuff at the table, SketTech on Discord had asked about how do you strike the right balance between technology and the table and too many distractions. Mentioned more relevant for when we're back to in-person gaming, but their game is currently a mix of adults and kids, and while they'd like to allow digital resources at the tabletop, every time they've tried, it devolved into a meme fest with the kids.
Wow.
That's honestly, I don't. I hear that one a lot, but that's not in a way that's not it's almost not a technology question, right? Because we've always had that long before technology. There's always been people who need to listen to the Super Bowl if it falls on the same day, and they're all chatting about it on something, or they're all drawing a picture and they share their picture around, or they all have snacks. And the difference, I guess, that you get with technology is they can make a personal connection with somebody else at the same time, which is the real pull out of the game. So I think the only thing you have to highlight, and so it's not really, I'm talking more of a mental question than a technology question. The whole point is stay engaged in the game, which the only thing I think that really means is don't engage in some other social thing. You can paint and draw, that helps people focus. You can look at scores, you can look at technology, but you still have to stay engaged in the game. So I don't disallow technology at the table. I just disallow engaging with other social aspects.
Yeah. I mean, you've got D&D Beyond, I mean, taking a foothold from that standpoint, especially not only what we do, but the tabletop games themselves, and the tablets now, and integration of the mobile platform. So yeah, that's a juggling aspect that you're going to have to deal with no matter what. So
I have an entertaining answer to this question. So if any of you watch my show, you know we are not a theatrical presentation. I stream the game with playing with my friends. So it's like real life. So I got my guy. They're transient. They're getting up, right, Jimmy? They're all over the place. You may hear bodily sounds occasionally. That's what happens, right? So I've dealt with that my entire existence since I was 12 years old, and so that the meme thing. I think it's just a matter of someone saying to the right person, child, hey, let's concentrate on the game here, have a little fun, maybe throw one here and there. But it's I think that's part of the game itself. Being completely concentrating on the game is not an easy thing for a lot of people. So I just I let my guys go with it, and let them have fun, enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a social engagement game for the people at the table, socially engaging with each other. Yeah.
With the amount of food and soda drinks and everything else that you're having at the table, how can you sit still for more than 5 minutes? So,
True, very true. That it applies to both remote play on VTT and in person. It's going to happen.
It does.
Yep.
Yeah. To which, a thing that I wanted to say on it, I feel like it's much like what Frank had said, but it's also just a mentality based as well as kind of a maturity based. Because it's one thing for it to just be memes and a completely side conversation. And it's something I brought up in the Discord when the question was posed yesterday, was there's one thing for it to be random memes, and then there's also memes that are relating to the game itself. Because then they're still engaged, and it's just another way that they're enjoying it because younger generation grew up with this technology and are very ingrained.
It's happening on my Discord channel when the games are being played. I'm watching the private chat rooms just for the gamers, and I didn't watch last night, and I got on this morning, and there were 20 sitting in the channel that they're zinging each other back and forth while they're playing the game. So,
You have to play the game. You have to play the game and DM the game as to accommodate your players, or you're not going to have a game for long. And that's just, that's something that's learned over time, whether it's VTT or not. Yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, though, I guess there are some different takes on that, even in a real life in-person setting. Some people, their idea of a good game is like clockwork, stay focused, move around, take your rolls, be ready on your turn. Like, it's very mechanical, regimented, I say. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like, this feels good to execute this thing with all these numbers together. And they're less there for the social aspects than for the game. And so those are just two different types of games.
Yeah, which is also a group dynamic thing, which isn't necessarily part of the tech, but something that if you're playing D&D for multiple years with multiple groups, something that you will notice. Because I have different play styles of different groups. That is a thing that is out there. I'm losing my thought. One for the more versed with VTT. So Jimmy, we have robot work in chat had asked about dealing with the unexpected on VTT. So like when your players do something surprising that you haven't necessarily prepared for.
Oh, is gameplay or tech wise, like computer crash or internet drop?
They mentioned the sort of thing where in person you'd take out markers and draw a quick map because the party went somewhere unexpected.
Sandbox play, sandbox
play. Yeah. So we deal with that. That's on the DM. It's on us having to deal. And how we bring them back into where you thought they were going to go for the game. My all-female group that I run Saturday night is all over the place. And so you just have to sigh and go, okay, well, that little encounter I had planned is not going to happen tonight. And, now they're off being pirates, doing stuff like that. So, with the VTT side, most of my games are going to be on the module based system where I've got pretty much a standard gameplay, and I kind of know where we're going with that. Except for the Saturday group, which is now becoming more open sandbox type deal, where a couple other DMs on the channel, they are definitely, that's how they run their game. It's pretty much, they've got a very loose agenda that they're going to try to accomplish for the show, and they just see where it goes. But with the ability to pull in the maps and the resources that you're find available either on the Fantasy Ground store or even on the guild, things like that, I've got more maps that I know what to do with. I've got plenty of tokens, and it doesn't take me but 5 seconds to go to find a folder where the map that I'm looking for, if I need a map to run the game, where we just go on RP and you just step back and you let the players do it, and they're getting just as much enjoyment then out of it if you're just letting them do their thing. So that's my answer.
And I will also say with VTT, you don't necessarily always have to have a map. Depending on your play style,
Right.
there is also Theater of the Mind, where you just find a nice ambience, like an art that encapsulates the area that your players are going to. You set the tone with some sound effects and Theater of the Mind.
The Saturday group, I keep going back to that one because they're the dynamic one. I'm going to be dismissed for one of the games coming up. It's going to be a DM-less game. They're going to run, it's an RP only session that they're going to set up, and they're going to let the viewers interact as kind of NPCs, and they're just going to role play the whole session, and I'm not allowed to make any judgment calls. I've already been told. So they're planning it. We haven't figured out what the date is. Yeah. So they want to do this really bad. And so I said, that's great. Tell me when.
The sandbox issue becomes a little more even more difficult for Frank and I, who have tabletops set up, right? And so that is where we really sometimes need to, on the spur of the moment, go to the Theater of the Mind or have just a blank area on the table and move a couple minis. So it tends to be a challenge, but
yeah,
it's fun.
How do you handle it, Frank?
Oh yeah, fair.
Well, so, I mean, that's. So the same way that Mick mentioned, but I think the different, I get my choice of how I want to handle it. So even for like the Reaper game that's coming up after, at 3:00 today, I imagine that there will be Theater of the Mind play, and there are two approaches I can use that are both the same as Mick has pointed out for a table for a VTT, right? I have a background image that we can go to, and people's cameras get a little bit bigger while the Theater of the Mind goes, and that background image can be interchanged with a shot from the table of the minis that are appropriate to the area, the feeling of the area they're in, even if they're not specifically interacting in that area or doing something in that area at the moment. Like if they're, I think it adds another option for me, to be honest, because because I have the minis and I can still move them around on the camera and just take that shot, and they don't have to move, right? But the music may still be there, kind of underlying and items. And I try not to sweat it too much, but I do like to have real terrain in the shots. So I will often cut to a terrain shot, but I don't mind going to a background image that's appropriate either.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost love Theater of the Mind a little bit more. I'm not sure why. I think it's just, at least with VTT, it feels from a player side like there's just more creative freedom. Because if there's a map, I feel like I have to interact with things that are there, but that isn't necessarily tech panel related. So we are a quarter of the way done. It's 10:30.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah. I feel like it's going by really slowly and fast at the same time, because it's just like, when do I want to go to to my fun talk, which is the jargon and the behind the scenes, and get Justin a little bit more involved. So it is. We had a question about one-on-one, which tech wise you can treat like anybody else at the table, and it's just as Jay has been incorporating in the chat via chatting instead of talking.
It's my talk show habit of just.
No, that's super
what we
cool.
do,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
But yeah, no,
I have 2 talk shows a week. It's like this is what I do. So I'm sorry. Just trying to be helpful.
No, I appreciate it. I love it.
No problem.
Because, I mean, yeah.
I just saw you got your hand in a cookie jar to you, Jay. It's like,
So
yeah, no.
I actually have a question here, since I can't lend much in terms of the conversation for VTTs and things like that, since mine is almost purest technology execution, right? Like, in fact, and just a little bit of a backstory here, my first experience with D&D was not until I was 21 years old. So I grew up with books and things like that. I actually didn't even really know what D&D was until I was about 18 or 19. Interestingly enough, I was buried in fantasy novels, but not the realm of role-playing, which I think I would have loved back then. But I digress. Anyway, my question here is kind of from a tech and a D&D side of things. What are, from y'all's experiences, in terms of VTTs and the kind of the hybrid, which is the tabletop like you do, Lord Gazumba, and then Frank, you do the production side, kind of a similar vein. What's the most challenging thing you guys have ever had to deal with in trying to tell a story? If you're trying to tell a story, of course, with video and multiple angles and things virtually, right? Like when you're in person, you can use facial expressions really well, but unless you have a camera that's close enough to really see that stuff. So, in the old days of theater, they would have exaggerated faces to kind of show stuff off. Like what is the most challenging thing you guys have ever had to do in terms of telling a story technologically?
I can go first.
Go for it.
All right, so I have 3 cameras running, 2 close-ups and 1 widescreen to get that whole. It's still not enough because I have a table. It's 8 foot by 8 foot, and I have guys all the way around it, so I can't show all at the same time, which I want. Myself, the 2 players next to me, the 2 players on the other side, the table, and so when we get into a real large scale combat, like maybe even a war size, when we have 100 figures on the table, I just don't have enough. You always want more, and I think Frank is the same way. You always want that perfect shot. You always want that, real great close up, but you just don't have so many. There's just only so many cameras, and I'm afraid to run a 4th camera with the technology and Twitch's bandwidth. I just even with the speed I have, I'm just worried about it. So that's it. Is like getting the whole encompassing experience so that you can see everyone playing at the same time and have all the action going on at the same time, and see everyone's facial expressions while they're playing. It's kind of difficult for the style I play.
Yeah. Well.
Right.
I mean, I could be cheeky a little bit, and I guess I'll open with this is not my final answer, but sometimes the hardest part is letting go of what you set up because it's not appropriate for the story. If you're talking about actually, we're in a technology panel, and I'm just coming right out with, sometimes the hardest part is letting go of the technology because you're hooked around it, but that's a little bit cheeky. It's just something to remember. It's always the right time for the right tool. I have a lot of cameras. Unlike I don't have a hesitance to add cameras. Sometimes I can't fit them all in. I run 8, 9. I think I've run 9 cameras at most, piping extra ones in. But when people are here live, I have 3 cameras for the table, and then 3 cameras for the individuals at the table to catch them in groups and stuff like that. So I'm running at a minimum 6 is the game that we run for actual cameras. During a remote event since COVID, you know, where people are calling in remotely, I mean, there's a camera on everybody. I mean, to be fair, Jimmy, you run 6-player games or more. That's each one of those is a camera that you're managing somewhere on the screen, and you have to tell the story with their face and stuff on top of whatever cameras at the table. So if you count those, then, you know, I've been into very, very high camera numbers. And my poor computer that most people think are overclocked and overworked and overspec'd can't handle it. Which it screams at me. So the hardest part I find in doing all that for me is my desire to make it as immersive as possible during a story moment, and not. So I need people. I have camera operators, and that's always the biggest challenge, is the coordination. There's a 3-part coordination. This is technology. This goes into it. I think it's an overly complex answer to this question, Mick. But
it's a hint to the Beyond the Veil.
It needs. So there's coordination. When you're just a DM at the table, you're the DM, and people talk about, oh, I couldn't possibly add a co-DM. That's too much. I don't know how that would work. But if you look at our games, we actually have 3 co-DMs sometimes. We have the DM who's running it. We have the technical director in the back who's kind of cutting together what shots are going to make the story look good, who's directing the camera operator, who's also framing up the shots for the story. And we will sometimes, and on top of that, have a stagehand moving minis, so that people won't just place them, right? So the players don't have to worry about just placing, but placing them and then turning them at the right angles. So you're still tactically playing the same game, but you're visually getting good angles on the cameras so that their faces are faced the right way, and you set up a good shot. So 4 DMs, that's the challenge. I have 4 DMs to run a single game.
And he may not want to admit this, but this is inside where he lives. Okay, this isn't at a studio too. So make sure y'all know that.
It is.
So,
Yep.
On the VTT side, I think it was Frank had teased on a little bit there. For me, it was the evolution of what I'm running on. Honestly, because I started that ventures, back in 2016, trying to handle an in-person game, and we had someone starting to travel. And so we tried the Skype deal, and we were trying to figure out how can I give him a view of the table. And so we started off with a notebook computer turned around and facing that internal camera and doing all that. And I said, this sucks. For me, it did. And so I got on the side. There's got to be a way to have a virtual table that we can mimic what we're doing. We'll put a TV on the table and do it that way. And that's what led me to Fantasy Grounds then. And then I said, well, I'm going to see what I can do with this platform. I'm just going to post out on Reddit and see if I can find some people that will play. And that week I had 4 games, and the channel was born. And so my system has evolved definitely over time of what I run on. And then we were just talking about on the pre-roll stuff, moving, I moved from, I have OBS that we still use a little bit. We can talk about that later, but I've moved to Vmix also, which is now taking in all those inputs. I think we're talking about cameras, but really we call it inputs, because all these devices and in pieces of the puzzle that we're trying to place in onto that overlay into that game for the presentation. And I got to manage all that, and I can post, I'll tease a little bit what I run on, but there is the picture I just posted of my setup. Almost, it's changed just a little bit already with my lights. I'm now using pretty much exclusively Elgato lighting equipment on my setup, and the green screen behind me. So that is what I'm looking at all the time. And I'm tech, so I've been doing it most of my life, so it wasn't a deal. And I spent 10 years in production here in Dallas. met my wife there. So I kind of melded the video production along with the technical side, and was very comfortable with what I was doing. So that is the evolution of the channel.
I'm going to interject too. If you see that picture, I didn't see the one he posted, but I'm almost positive it's the one he's posted.
You know which one it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that in the space. Mine is piled high with papers and documents and drinks and stuff in front of my computer. You have, you're just, what are you doing on that desk that you keep it so clean?
It is impossible to keep my desk clean as well.
Plus, I have a cat. Usually, it's over to my right, laying there, doing something. And I just sent you the link.
Mick, I think I don't want to lose it. I know I don't want to jump ahead though. So you tell me if we're going to get there. Someone asked about how we're audio communicating with people. I'll let you handle when to bring that up.
Yeah. I have that marked down for when we start going, and then in the chat, I had mentioned briefly that it's just quick answer. We've got headsets, and then when we're in person, we can eye contact and be like, "We want to." Weird hand signs.
This is all I have on my table for sound. Right, that's it. That's all I need.
Jay, how many players do you have? You have 5, right?
6. Yeah. I have 5.
How many?
No one sits down.
So you have 5 camera operators though, the way you play.
Well, yeah, and it's charming because half the time we'll take this camera here and I'll drop it, and you'll get a headache from watching my stream half the time, But that's part of the charm of what we do. So
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, which I think at that point, I think it's a good segue into the streaming tech aspect of it, with the first question that I had when it was originally just going to be the opener and then it became tech at the table. Everyone on this panel live streams, obviously. I feel like we've talked about the shows a lot at this point. When you're talking about tech for your streams, your goal impacts the gear that you aim for. So my first question that I was going to be was, what do you stream, or like what do you feel is the goal for your stream? And we can start with anyone.
Go for it, Frank.
Ask that again. I missed that. I'm trying to understand what you're asking.
What's the goal?
Okay, so
what's the goal of the channel or the stream of our show?
Goal of the show, because you may utilize different gear depending on your show. So, I guess Frank, when we talked about it in our briefing, I used you as an example since we work together. So I think maybe if Frank gives his answer, it might clear up a little bit.
Yeah. So for us, definitely the goal drives the technology a lot, and that is, so I like miniatures. I love miniature playing. Part of the game that I enjoy is miniatures. Some people are that's one of their favorite parts of the game, whether or not they're painting it and they get to see their mini or whatever, right? From the time when we were little kids and we're making sandcastles and putting our little figures or whatever in them out in the dirt or playing or wherever we played, right? It's imagination. And part of that for me has always been the terrain or the scenery around them. So there's a lot of streamers who are streaming people playing D&D, and they're just like, we're just like we are right here, right? We're just a talking camera in their theater of the mind, and that's perfectly fine. It's that's not what I wanted though. What I wanted was a more kind of cinematic experience, so that the cameras are down in there sometimes, not always, but so as though you're looking at it like maybe some play. It's obviously not edited together nice enough to call it a movie, but like a play is taking place before you if you're the viewer. So to make that happen, I chose a certain technology set, which I won't answer now because it's longer. I'll let everybody else do their answers first. But that's what drove my technology choices. I knew that I wanted to pull this off like a play with scenery and props more than just a D&D game or a role-playing game where you're in the theater of the mind. I knew I wanted to avoid theater of the mind for the streams as much as I wanted, more than I wanted to just show the table and get in there like people could watch a play that's improv. It's an improv play.
Did that
Okay.
help?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this if you want me to go next. I found Frank perusing, because I always look, because I was like the only one I had known of that was a miniature tabletop streamer back when I started. There was no one really. And then I came across Frank's stream. And that's how Frank and I met. It's like, Frank, wow, you have a great setup and you do wonderful things. And that's how the relationship started, because we all know Frank is not a Greyhawk streamer like I, but he will do Greyhawk games, once in a blue moon, which is wonderful. But that's how we met, was over the miniatures. And for me, gosh, I don't want this to sound arrogant. You need to differentiate yourself and find your niche on Twitch to be successful. And our niche is, we want to have the best tabletop setup on Twitch for D&D. That's what we want to do. So we have Reaper, wonderful, and we have 2 3D print companies that we deal with. We have Miniature Building Authority, and we put that all together, and we want to make a visual, exciting, almost have that old school Gygaxian war game feel to our game. And then with that, we had to build the technology around it, and that took some time. What cameras, what speed does our internet need to be? We had to figure all that out. And our first 6 months of shows were not the most wonderful to watch. And that's how, I got to my point. Jimmy's shaking his head.
Well, I think I was going to say I was the same way. You say that, and I go back and I look at pictures of my original shows and the setup and all, and how it has evolved. So I think we're all that way. I look at that now and I go, "Oh my God, someone was watching me." Oh man, and how we have evolved and understood the platform that we're using. I started off in y'all's arena. I've got so many of the old Heritage Grenadier. I've got a ton of all those miniatures sitting in my garage to paint, which was what I was doing. And I got Hearst art. I was into his molds. I wasn't into 3D yet. Wasn't really prevalent yet. And so I was building that stuff. We were going to use it for our games. And then that, like I said, what happened with me in the Fantasy Ground side, and I totally, with my tech background, just took a right hard turn and found myself in the VTT realm. And now I don't get to paint and I don't get to do all, because I've got so much. I miss the physical aspect of that. And I think the other 2 channels, they get that tactile feeling and to be able to use the miniatures and the plane and all that. And there's immersion there. And so from the VTT side, I've got other resources to try to bring some of that feel back into the game. And that's something that you struggle with. And you sometimes get it, and sometimes you'll miss that shot, and it's happened on the show a few times. But, other than that, you're relying on your players too. Then also they've got to bring something to the table also to make the game enjoyable. So it's not all tech, but a lot of it is. So.
And then Justin, this is also a question for you, because even though you're not a D&D stream, you do still stream.
Yeah. I was thinking kind of carefully about the answer, and it's kind of multifaceted for us. So it's we weren't even streamers up until like I said, almost 2 years ago, and we started off as just YouTubing, right? So I would say in terms of Reaper, it feels more like a vision and less just like a goal, where basically I think that one of the big separation, I kind of envy it a little bit too, is that when you guys have decisions or these goals or visions for stuff that you want to execute and do, oftentimes you can consult a couple of people, but for the most part, Frank or Jimmy, or I mean, when you guys decide, you know what, I want to put this in, this is what I think looks best, right? That often for us, it comes with a lot of red tape, right? So basically, if something wants to happen, there's various people that we talk to and various opinions. Like, good example is I made a ReaperCon commercial, and that took a back and forth, and it was kind of not so much collaboration, but like a round table, if you would, where I'm the creative driving force, but there's 8 cooks in the kitchen, right? And so that's virtually everything we do, with the exception of the technology side of stuff, where that's, you know, I'm by myself there, and that does make the entire thing easier, sure, because if I had to consult Ron or Dave or Ed on what mixer I was going to buy, I would never get anything done. And so basically, that's why I feel like it's more of a vision. So for our channel, when we started streaming, Ed had the idea that, and it's still the case, it's still our goal or our vision, is that we want to provide around the clock entertainment. Ed wants to fill every minute of every day with some content, like he wants to turn us into a television station, essentially. And so when I make decisions, it's a lot of times it's as modular and as, I would say, as close to like a factory setup as I can make it, where I'm building a general set, and that set, if it's used for kind of a spoiler here, a little bit of a hint, a ghost hunting show that might show up on the channel sometime in the next couple of months. If I do it for a ghost hunting, essentially talking head podcast thing, or if I turn around and this is our venture into the tabletop type filming, much like D&D, in all reality, what we will likely end up doing is wargaming. So as Ed develops a new system or has ideas, and we streamed Warlord a couple of times, just those were completely shot from the hip. They didn't, they weren't meant to do anything, but as an example of what we thought we might want to try. So if you see tabletop stuff for us in the future, it will likely be just wargaming, and it'll be our systems that we create. So I think that from my standpoint, it's the idea of using a tabletop to tell a story is, 1/20th of all of the different types of things that we want to do. So it feels a little more in that case sanitized and general, right, versus the hyper specialized stuff that you might need in terms of getting people around a table, even as far down as, not to get into the tech jargon just yet, but having the type of condenser you want on your microphone, right, whether you want that to be a broad, right, or whether you want to be hyper focused, right, and it's just. It's interesting because it is a very different approach because of what we do and what we develop versus the kind of the fast response time you guys can have. So in a way, you guys can make a change, and I appreciate that on the spot.
Yeah, you've got a larger footprint that you have to deal with as a
Correct.
company.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the image that you're putting forth, that public image, yeah, definitely see the challenges that are there for that.
Yeah, and there's the marketing side for sure. Like there's a lot of, as a company, it is very different. Yes. So go ahead, Meg. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say that as somebody who has worked and works in actual like production places, that the red tape, the too many cooks type deal for trying to get an idea developed and established and making sure that its protocol is standard operating procedure for actual production houses.
Right. I forget. Yeah, your day job. You know exactly what that's like, don't you, Mick?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's no, and it's really it's really not that bad here in all reality. In terms of company size, it could be infinitely worse. Because at the end of the day, if I go to Ed or Dave and I say, listen, this is my vision, this is what I want to do, they will often kind of go, okay, go do it, and then we can always cancel it if it sucks, right? Like, you know what? I agree with that. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, we're each our own company, so but now we're at that. Yeah, we're we're at the top of the chain there. So with the changes we're gonna make, I approve it. you know, so
Yeah,
yeah, less
exactly.
red tape to have to deal with.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And this is a beloved hobby for me. I have a real life job outside of this, and I do this because I enjoy it and love it. When this becomes a tedious job, I won't do it anymore. So, yeah.
Isn't
Right.
it already? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. What happened?
No,
Isn't it though?
and I will say I love what I do, and I think that getting into the streaming community and meeting, you know, everyone here, even like 2 years ago when we were just in the YouTube circles, we never would have met, right? And so I will say I do really appreciate and love the new people I'm meeting, and you know, the like-minded individuals, especially in terms of technology. Like there's far fewer people who are as into the tech as people who just, you know, want to play D&D, which is that's normal. But it's great to see, you know, people that do the same stuff I do.
So yeah, moving forward from what do you stream, or like the goal of your streams, now it's what do you use?
I should not
last
start
because
that.
No.
No,
I'm
I
last
think
because
you
guys
should
blow
start
me
that.
away.
You should start that, Jay, because otherwise, Jimmy and myself, we could drag on for too long.
Okay.
And I want to put a
And
big,
Justin.
I do want to put a big asterisk here, though, before we even go into this. All right now, this is almost 100%, with a few exceptions of actual specifications on the stuff you're using. Usually, it's a preference, and there's lots of variables and moving parts. All right, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll do it as quickly as possible. So first thing, I have one main computer. I believe I have a 9900 Ti or whatever processor, you know, i9 and 2800 video card in my machine with plenty of RAM memory, 3 cameras, and one area mic and the headset. And I'm a one-man show with everything for the most part when it comes to that part of my streaming, because I have 2 talk shows and then 1 to 2 actual D&D games. So the funny thing is that I need to haul all this equipment down 2 flights of stairs on Thursday night and set up in my basement where my gaming table is. So I'm still doing some stuff real old school as far as that goes, because of the locations. I use XSplit Broadcaster, which works very well for me and does everything I need it to do. And I would say I have probably the lowest setup of the 3 here. I have what a normal, I'm sorry, Frank and Jimmy, what a normal person at home could have, because I know neither of you two are normal. So when it comes to the and I have a little Stream Deck with 15 buttons on it, with some programming, and I use some music that I bought the rights to, and I use couple programs that I have licensed to use, because the last thing any of us need are copyright issues, which happen all the time on Twitch and YouTube.
Yep.
And so you have to really be careful with that. But that's no geek. I have a second setup, my son's machine, which is the seat right here. But no, I just the one setup, and I do a lot. You'll see me during GagCon. I'll be running up and down the steps multiple times during that. But yeah, so I have a manageable. I'd say, getting you in, this is a guess, 4,000. Sound about right? About 4,000 in equipment. Yeah. So that's where I am.
I don't even know.
I'll go next because I can. My question's a little bit simpler answer. On the front of our Twitch page for Praetor's Rejects, down in the button areas, I list out pretty much what I've got. So you can see the whole list there, outside of some of the services like Sirenscape and Epidemic Sound, some of the other, you know, license-free areas that we use for the stream. But the technical side is all there for what I'm sitting in front of, that machine, the picture that Ann was able to post there. So I keep it simple. So
how many screens do you have? 6, 10? How many?
5 screen, 4 that are production based. The big one up above me is just the Twitch feed coming from Apple TV. But you know, for the hardware, yeah, Jay and Frank will say the same thing. The horse, you know, that I have sitting on the ground, you know, up under my desk, is powering all that. And it has grown over time because I run, like Jay, I have my own company. I run an IT company here in Dallas. And so that's what's kind of helping pay the bills and get me access to stuff that costs. Yay, all that fun stuff, because that's what I do for a living. And then I take, the production side that I spent, for quite a long time here in Dallas. I take that knowledge and translate it to the technical side. Even though we're not in production anymore, after 08 hit, it was game over for us on the producing side. I'm back in it now. It has a way of dragging you back in, kicking and screaming. So that's my answer.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so the first thing I'll start with is the core. I'm software based, not hardware based. It was a choice because I would consider everything I have prosumer, and I have some high quality stuff, but it's prosumer stuff, all the way up to the cameras I use, and the one thing that's maybe, actually I'd consider the PC prosumer too, but this little PC, I have 3 PCs essentially. One big one that's assembling all this, because it's not hardware based, it's software based switching, and so we're going through Blackmagic design, video capture for our cameras, running SDI runs. The PC itself is a nice i9 7980XE, one of those lots and lots of cores PCs. It's got 64 gigs of RAM. It's running an NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti, which chokes on itself. It can't keep up. I need more than whatever the 3090 is going to be. I need the next generation, basically, or I need to throw in some of the big $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 graphics cards that are out there. The Quadros. If I really wanted to do this on the not pro, and that's why I say it's prosumer, right? A 2080 Ti is a prosumer card approach for this, as opposed to throwing in a Quadro. And so that's one of the PCs. The other one is a simple render PC that is got a much lower graphics card in it, that's running. So my main PC runs Vmix, and I'm doing a lot of my production mixing in Vmix as the cameras come in. The other PC that's coming out is got OBS on it, and the final stream is from there because it's running captioning in through it. On the table, we use Nikon DSLRs instead of video cameras because, and I will say this, it is my preferred choice. As I've gone over, if I want a video camera that does the lens depth of fields and things I want, I'm suddenly looking at $100K for a single camera, no lens involved, if I want the non-prosumer version. And I'm not going to do that. So I'm using DSLR cameras with good. Those are probably the only non-prosumer stuff I have are the lenses on the cameras themselves. They're all professional, 70 to 200, 24 to 70 lenses, right? And then lighting, I use a Texas company for my LED lights. It's iCan. And I also have a nice big Chimera lantern over the top of everything. That's a 1,000-watt bulb. It will cook everybody at the table. People who come in here actually have to wear makeup generally if they're playing on stream, or they'll get sweaty. They'll get glossy if they don't put a little powder on, anti-gloss powder. Could you imagine Jay making all your players put a little powder on so they don't?
It would never happen.
Oh yeah.
They don't. And then technology, we're communicating back and forth. You start running microphones. We have this nice Shure SM7B. That's we have some cheaper PC, some other mics at the table that are also Shure, and then we have a monitor system with multiple channels so that the technological crew that is here is on a different audio bus from the players so that they can have their own conversations to mix cameras and move things around in the background And I'm not getting specifics so much, but yeah, so all those things are in play. And then mixing audio, final output right out to stream to as many places as I want to stream at the same time, rather than like some people could go to restream and then blast it out multiple ways. I just hit it multiple ways from here.
We use the Vmix power. So.
Yep, use the Vmix power in that. So basically a lot of things that professional productions would be doing with hardware switchers, I'm using Vmix to do software switching. I still run SDI. A lot of people would be running NDI at this stage, but I only have a gigabit network here, and that is limited. I come up against the limits of gigabit all the time. I should be running a 10 gigabit network to be running all the video that I'm running on it. Oh, and I'm using a digital mixer, a Behringer X18
so
Air.
Most people out there, your setup is not sufficient to run what Frank's running, basically, as far as just bandwidth. There's just no way.
Yeah, if Geek Puppet, I need a 10 gig network at home. I'm considering adding a couple switches at least, so that at least the camera feeds, if I'm running NDI back and forth, won't choke each other out.
I will say, at least with when you're working on networking with NDI and cameras and all of that stuff, you don't necessarily need it actually hooked up to the internet. You just need it hooked up to each other.
Yeah.
It's because if you actually hook it up to the internet, then you start running into security risks.
Yeah, and that's an internal 10 gigabit, right? My outside is 1 gig up and down, and I need the up. A lot of people, I need all that. If you look at Vmix, I'll have 8 callers, right? And those are 1080 30p streams. They're using bandwidth, and Jimmy's going to go to sleep. Those are those are consuming a certain amount of bandwidth as they come in, and I'm sending them all a bandwidth signal out individually, back out. So there's 8 1080p or 1080p bandwidth streams coming in, 8 1080p bandwidth streams going out, just for the people calling in. That doesn't count the stream that's going out, monitoring the stream that's coming. I also, like Jimmy, I have 3 monitors at the desk. I have 3 50-inch monitors around the table for the players to see what's going on. There you go. There's my curtain, Justin.
Perfect.
You asked, you shall receive. So,
And Justin?
And it's funny because, like, for us, we started, like I said, we started it with YouTube. So this department started with a Sony FS5, a kit lens, and basically like an Audix microphone, like a hypercardioid pattern Audix microphone, and then a computer. We built at that point, I think we had built like an i7 basic. I think it had a 1080 Ti, I think, in it. I mean, because it was built 3 years ago, and it was fine. It was a good setup. And then when we evolved, because it was originally going to be hardware concentric, right? Because everything was done in post. I didn't have to worry about broadcasting. The idea of broadcasting wasn't on our radar at that point. Mm-hmm. And then when we evolved, when I 6 months into our YouTube venture, I was like, we should stream. We need to stream. And then when I finally convinced everyone that's what we were doing, that's when we kind of shifted into kind of a hybrid where we're still very hard into the hardware side of it. It's less now. I do use Vmix, but as when we set this thing up in September, because at that point I'd picked up a new Behringer mixer, and Frank helped me set my mixer up. Basically, we decided at that point that we wanted to expand hardware wise and then do less on the software side, so it feels more like a production correct, a production house. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. Now, I think currently, because we built this computer, so when we moved to streaming, at that point, I took the opportunity, like I answered someone's Monster Slayer boss earlier. We went from generating pennies, basically pennies for that super, super lucrative YouTube ad revenue, let me tell you. So we went from making pennies on that to obviously subs, the marketing that goes with it, the promotion of stuff. It really took off on terms of Twitch. And then when we saw that and we looked at the numbers, we were like, well, not only can we like actually pay for what we're doing, we might be able to make money if we keep doing this. Like the department itself could start to make money. And so, and then thank you again to everyone watching. It's y'all's support that makes that happen. Thank you. But basically from that point, Dave was like, you know what? Get what you need to get, right? He was like, he didn't give me an unlimited budget, but he said, get what you need to get. So, I mean, I ended up with, I love the Canon ecosystem because I love the glass, right? Canon glass is, you know, Frank and I go jokingly around and around on this, right? Because he's a Nikon guy. But
I'm a huge fan of the Zeiss lenses.
Zeiss are fantastic too. I do love Zeiss. I can't argue with it. I mean, in terms of third-party lenses, Zeiss are what I would go to outside of Canon. But they also make great eyeglasses too, as a side note. But so basically, we decided to pick up, like, I think at this point we own 5 C200s. All of them, and I'm slowly getting to this point. The reason why I went with the C200 is because I like to capture it raw, which gives me the 12-bit color depth, because I love to mess with that stuff on the software side, right? It also allows me to, when we do shoot YouTube videos, to shoot really, really high quality slow-mo, high quality. Like we've done some experimental stuff on our YouTube channel that's really nice, really high level. We can shoot some YouTube commercials that feel really high level, and you can do that with DSLRs, of course. But we wanted to go with dedicated video cameras, and then eventually record RAW. But outside of that, I think we have. I finally got some Cine lenses in. In fact, I'm using one of them for the cross cam that we have on our main setup here. I haven't used a Cine lens since college, basically almost 10 years ago, and they're fantastic. You know, I love T-stops, right? And so yeah, they're great. And so we have. I mean, I would say if we're not including the studio we just built, I mean, we're definitely thousands of dollars in at this point. I mean, several thousand. I don't know. And we're a company, right? So oftentimes the main part of what we do will fuel this. If this isn't, we're not having to balance what it makes versus what we want to put into it versus it being a hobby, that kind of stuff. Thankfully, we don't have to make those kinds of decisions. It's very helpful. But, you know, it's great. I think that upon changing up my hardware, I think we're kind of happy where we are now. And Frank recently turned me on to Shure microphones. This sounds going to sound crazy. I had not used a Shure microphone up until literally September of last year. And I've messed with every other brand in the world, but Shure, when you dial them in, they're beautiful microphones. I'll never go back to I mean, not that Rode isn't most of the they're fine, but Shure microphones are just too great to pass up at this point. But they aren't practical for, I would say, the average person, for sure.
For sure.
No, and we run like 8 of them, so I think we have 8 of them at this point. So
there is a setup though that the normal person who's watching now can afford and can get to that point. It's not, you know.
You can broadcast with it. I mean, when our first entry level, we only spent, I mean, Dave said, hey, you have $5,000 to build a computer, buy a camera. That's why I used a kit lens. Half of my budget went to my camera, right? Granted, we weren't going to, and even though, you know, I think in hindsight, I probably should have gone to a DSLR and put a really nice, you know, piece of glass on it, but it's fine. It worked out in the end. So, but outside of that, I mean, it is very affordable. You can do it for $100. You can do it for 100,000 or 1 million if you really wanted to. That's kind of crazy about it. It scales very quickly if you want it to. So,
yeah, and I will say also personally, I freelance, so I have tech gear and everything on my own personal, and otherwise it's not getting used. But I have a stream set up here. I don't stream much, but when I do, it's painting. And this webcam is the Logitech 922, C922. I have this headset, which is what you're using. It says it's muted, but it's not. Something's going on with that light. but I also have just a Rode Yeti, or not Rode, a Blue Designs Yeti microphone, and like you don't have to put in a lot. I have a GoPro, I have a Canon Xa15, which is an SDI HDMI 1080 camera. But like a ring light, a 1080 webcam, and a USB microphone.
Is that camera? Is that a DSLR?
The Xa15 is not.
Oh, is it a mirrorless?
No, it's a camcorder.
Oh, it's a camcorder. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know
prosumer.
that. Yeah, because I know Canon obviously, as recently, for people who keep up with it, started getting into mirrorless, right? Because of Sony.
I really want the EOS R.
I have not played with any of them yet, and I know people go up and down about it. And I'm like, I kind of want to try one, but anyway, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I did so. I have both. I personally, because this is what I'm trained in, and I have the technology and the degree in it. If I stream, it has to be top tier, just because my own sanity is just like I know too much. But you don't have to.
No, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
We've been doing this a while. The four of them, me as attached to Nightheart Gaming, but I'm Jimmy, Justin, and we've got experience in the field, so we know what to look for. But you don't have to.
Yeah.
I was completely self-taught, and I learned by failure. Let's put it that way. Just what to do and what not to do.
Failure.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could actually do a segment after this one about kind of where we actually started in terms of what got us here. But yeah, I was gonna say, Jay, I'm actually 100% self-taught. I was briefly in school, very briefly, in school for RTVF at UNT, and I basically ended up stopping that to open a video company, and that lasted for a couple of years, and then I sold my portion of it, and then I didn't touch video again. I said I wasn't going to. I was done with it. Fast forward to Reaper, and here we are. But
like I said, it drags you back in, kicking and screaming.
It really does.
My dream is to own my own studio system and have live stream capabilities as well as just a soundstage. That is my dream. Will it actually happen? Probably not, but boy, I would love it.
You do not know.
To quote
It's
the
around
internet,
the corner.
Yeah, to quote the internet culture, don't let your dreams become memes.
Fair. Going back to some of the questions that we've had earlier in the stream, work robot work, which it's really, I have a speech impediment, guys. That is a really hard name to say.
Every time I see it, I see twerk. I'll be honest.
I see twerk too.
Yeah, it's like twerk robot twerk. Oh no. Okay.
But they asked, do you mostly use cameras that are manually aimed or a mix of PTZs and manual? I will say my dream is PTZ because it makes everything easier and you can do it with less people. But I will let everyone else discuss the pros and cons as well.
So, I'll let someone. I don't need to go first.
2 tripods with a camera on it. That's it. And I have one that's attached to the table for the widescreen.
PTZs would work great for you, Jay.
I don't even know what that is.
Ideal for your setup.
He doesn't even know what it means. Is that what he said?
I don't even know what it's.
It's a robotic camera, so you have a controller that you can control it from another area.
Right.
It's called wife kicking my ass over buying stuff like that, right? So, yeah, sorry to say that on
gonna
Twitch,
happen.
but yeah, it's not in the cards.
They're getting cheaper.
And honestly, if I could go back, I would probably do 100% PTZs as long as the quality held up. Because, as you guys know, I'm the only person in the department. So when I have 6 cameras up, I have to focus them all myself and move them all myself. So
I would not go PTZ. They don't. Someday, if they made the technology, but it harkens back to why I chose DSLRs with good glass. And why I would choose the only step up I could possibly make in my mind is to true movie cameras, like ARIs and stuff is I want the depth of field. I want control over the depth of field. PTZs are still very big depths of field, and they won't do it for what I need for this. They're great cameras, and for solo stuff, there's no way you could beat it. We do have a PTZ camera that I sometimes use if the technical director wants it. That a couple actually different versions, an IP version and the Mevo, which I do an RTMP stream to another PC, and then anyway, because it has a wide angle, so you can see what's going on at the table for the technical director to see into the other room where the camera operators are, so they won't make requests of them and make a camera operator run around the table to stumble. But so I would use PTZs for that, overhead cams and stuff, but nothing I wanted a cinematic shot on.
I will say they are starting to get PTZ mounts that you can put any camera on.
Now that I would do.
That is, and I imagine stuff like that is, I mean, in the, talk about news production level, like there are definitely like StabiliTrack things you can put stuff on. Like I could build an entire rack system here to do that, but the rack system alone would cost as much as the studio, right? And if I went to Dave with, hey, Dave, I want to automate this one camera for this look right here. And he goes, well, how much does it cost? And I tell him, and he's like, I'm not doing that. And
you're fired.
Yeah, you're fired.
I have 2 slider rails, which rarely come out, and I would love to bring them out because I really need the mechanical, the automated operation on it to give a steady shot with these style of cameras. They make plenty of good systems that are smooth enough to get things automatically, but a camera operator, it's a little delicate for these cameras, and it's the camera's fault to get a stable slide, a live action slider zoom. But
I actually have a Cinetic set up in a box behind me I have not opened, but look forward to seeing that on the channel at some point, so that, you know, because I wanted that like moving ESPN look, but it's going to take some of the logistics working out. So also, I realized earlier I didn't answer the question because I droned on. The computer that we actually currently have that we just built, for the sake of processing, the main computer that does all the work it's got a Xeon 16 core in it, and it's got a 3080 in it. So it's a monster of a PC. But fun fact, I have more problems with it than my consumer PC at home. In fact, I was worried leading up to this that my computer wasn't going to turn on. Yeah, it's fine now.
I will say this: the other reason that I enjoy prosumer is there's actual support for it.
Fact.
As soon as you go to a professional item, your support level either
you have to pay for it.
You add 2 digits on everything, at least.
Absolutely.
Maybe 3.
Absolutely.
Which going into what Justin had just said, I was catching the tail end of the coffee catch up. And one of the things that you said to John and Colin was that when you're working live stream, you have to be able to be on the fly. You have to be able to make adjustments because you never know. If you do plan on streaming, there has to be flexibility and the ability to troubleshoot under pressure.
Right. Yeah, because the flip side of that coin is, well, just turn the stream off. Guess we're not doing it. Like, then that's never an option, right? So it's always, well, limp to the finish line if you need to, or crawl, but don't ever stop.
Yeah, I have backups of everything. Some like if I lost a digital mixer, I bring out the analog mixer, and that might cause a stream to be 45 minutes late or something as I make audio bus reroutes, which is not an easy thing to do. Oh man! But it could be done, and that would be the hardest thing I had to swap out. I've got spare cameras, spare computers. If I dumped computers, I'd go down to less cameras because they have less inputs on it. But I got backups because you have to remain. We're streaming, and I'm sorry, that's not true. Let me step up a bag. If you're streaming in a more casual environment, you just say the thing that everybody does because it happens to them. Hey, something went wrong. I can't stream today, or But that's not my headspace for streaming, right? It's a production show. It goes live. I don't care if I fail good. It's gonna go live. I don't care if I don't have the equipment. It's gonna go live. The only thing that has stopped me is when Texas took away my power. and everybody
Freeze.
else's.
I was getting ready to say.
You know, I'm not streaming through that because I don't have enough backup generation to run all this stuff.
We need power.
Yeah, you guys lived in the kitchen for 4 days.
Yeah. Yep.
I have a question for everyone, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What is your internet connection? What do you have? I have cable through my cable provider, 1 gigabyte up. I'm sorry, 1 gigabyte down and 40 up. That's it.
I couldn't run with 40 up, to be honest, Jay. That would be the theoretical minimum that I would need, and that would be returning everybody's feed at a low resolution. And in theory, bandwidth you never get the max of what you theoretically have. So I would need at least 80 up. I have a gigabit up and down fiber to the house, and from anywhere I move, if I'm going to run this production out of the house, the internet connectivity will dictate where I move in the world.
Right, absolutely. And that's, I was going to say I have a gig up and down at home because of the AT&T fiber, and it's fantastic. But realistically, explaining to when people talk about streaming that my overhead has to be, because that's the nature of bitrate, right? It's just because you've added it all up and it totals 40 meg up, right? It's like, well, that's what I need to get it out. But you need much more overhead because that fluctuates, right?
Yep.
So right now over here at the studio, though, I think we're sitting on 100 up and 100 down. But we're also, because everything is kind of standardized, because that's the way I've made it, it's very predictable and very easy, unless Ed wanders in and says, I want 6 cameras right now on the desk.
100 up, 100 up is fine. I mean, you can't do maximum resolution, but it works.
Yeah.
And when I say that, reference all the things I said earlier that I'm pulling in and out. I could still make it work with 100 up.
Yeah, we it's the best we could get over here, unfortunately, and it's not. It will be a limiting factor at some point, right? Especially once it becomes more mainstream and realistic via platforms to stream in 4K. Right.
I'm trying to remember. You're talking about the new studio, Justin?
Yes.
The new building and where y'all at? Because I'm trying to remember the area and all that. I'm picturing it there. I haven't. We're moving up there hopefully next year.
It's over. There is. I don't think 1 gig. The AT&T fiber doesn't seem to have reached this part of Denton. I live in Fort Worth personally. Like I commute almost an hour and a half every day, one way. So like down there, it's everywhere, and I'm never gonna go anywhere that isn't 1 gig up and down, even for my personal consumption. I can't do it. I can't go down to anything else. I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Hey, you can pay to drop that fiber to your wall. It's,
Pay
there's a lot of numbers,
that,
but you can pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah.
And
pay for that survey.
Dave and I have talked about it. We might end up doing that. I think that could be in the cards, but we'll see.
I got frontier fiber myself, so I'm good.
For a normal streamer, what I have out there for anyone watching is sufficient.
It's plenty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's plenty.
Yeah, plenty.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the reasons for you, Jay, for example, I wouldn't recommend going to something like Vmix, and for Vmix Call specifically, is because you're not negotiating that on Vmix server somewhere. You're negotiating that on your computer, which means you have to manage all that bandwidth in and out. And if you don't, if you need but most people would never have to do that. They take Zoom. And the return bandwidth is managed centrally via a Zoom server or a Skype server somewhere, and then they're just snapping windows.
Absolutely.
And that's Zoom. Zoom is what works for me, and and I'll stick with that until there's something else that makes more sense. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vmix. Thanks to Frank for bringing me over to Vmix because of the call part. That call feature for me, instead of having the Zoom and the dropouts for players and all that. I want the windows all to stay where they belong. And, you need to go dark. You don't mess me up. And then I would say that the second feature now is the spreadsheet, the CVS import, because
you're using it.
So, so that brought in so I started to deviate there, but I was with Fantasy Grounds. We don't have a D&D type ability, D&D Beyond type ability to show those updates to the player stats and things like that. And so I like that functionality that the streams get. I question how much people actually watch them and look at them a lot. I think you can go in and every time and you'll want to look at the quick stats and then you're in and out. And this is just my opinion. So I wanted to say, how can I provide that functionality through Fantasy Grounds? Those stats are generated in a file somewhere. I need them extracted out and put into the file format, CVS format, CVS, and then I can show them on Vmix. And so one of the programmer developers that does stuff on the side created that little backside application for me that reads the Fantasy Grounds database every 5 seconds. And now through the Vmix portion, I can project those stats dynamically onto my overlay. And I don't have to go in after every time they level up or make a change, go in and change those in a Photoshop file and put those back into the overlay.
Cool.
It's now dynamically doing it. Now, it took my processing up the roof, I will tell you that. So my machine is over there going, it's churning through some stuff every 5 seconds of looking at that, but I thoroughly enjoy that now. So I don't have to do that. It's dynamically updated, which is what we're wanting in the stream.
You got 16 cores. That's what I use them for.
That's funny because we actually just started using the same CSVs back in September when I was trying to do titles and things like that, and it's infinitely easier to just change something in a document than it is to
right.
It is so much easier.
I love having those stats updated dynamically now and play in the overlay. So,
I am a huge snipper. I'm a JPEG snipper, as you probably may see. That's the way. I take a PDF, put it on my screen, snip it, and then put it in wherever I needed to put it in. All right, kind of old-fashioned.
Hey, that's
It's
valuable. It works.
I still end up having to do something similar to that because frequently, as Mick was listening earlier, what she talked about is because we have to do stuff on the fly. I don't always have time to put in photos and icons and stuff into a preloaded, set. So oftentimes it's 5:58. Ron walks in and goes, "Hey, I just sent you an email. You have 30 photos in there." And I'm like, "Okay, give me 30 seconds. Hold on." And so it happens like that all the time. So you don't always have that kind of, but it's great when you can ahead of time do that. It definitely makes it much easier to display it and organize it and stuff. So.
Which, on a professional level, that's why character generators are so expensive and so vital, because it is a dedicated graphics generator.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to let everyone know we're kind of at our 15-minute warning mark here. So.
Yeah.
Nope.
I dislike that, Justin. No.
Well, I mean.
I don't have a choice, though. Okay.
So a while ago, it kind of goes back to tech at the table, but also streaming tech, and we can get into it however we would like. Trippy Darlin on Twitch had asked, do any of you or your players work day jobs on the computer? And then if so, what types do you have to help ensure your online games don't feel like more work? So it can work how, we can make it stream, we can make it just general tech at the table. There's a lot of stuff or maybe that's just me because I work production at a computer. So
I was going to say,
it's always work.
my day job is right now. It's actually what we're doing. So it's.
I'm IT, so I'm in front of a computer. That's my life. Unless my wife comes up here and grabs me and drags me away saying, "You've done enough, get out and, let's do something else." I got to pay attention to her. Pay attention to my wife.
Get some sun.
I'm an out-on-the-road sales rep for a company that's about 2 hours south of Reaper. That's our corporate headquarters is in Temple, Texas, and I do it all myself on the PC and just spend a lot of time making split broadcast setups. So it's not that bad. It really doesn't take that long. Get a template set up and you're good.
I also wanted to I noticed you answered a question earlier, Mick, in chat in terms of streaming softwares. I wanted to point out that when we first started here, we used OBS Streamlabs, first off when we first started streaming. And I want to say OBS Streamlabs has its downfalls, right? But I think if you're solo streaming and you're especially if it's a video game, I don't think there's anything better on the market, in my opinion. I think for a free, even as a freeware, even against things that cost money, it is what the original Apple smartphone was back in 2006 is to like the world. It is going to be sometime in the next 5 years when it's full release software. It is going to be the premiere. Everyone already uses it now. But obviously,
I wish that was true, Justin.
Oh man, tons of people. Everyone I talk to, I try to bring in for this. I wish they just use OBS so we could SRT them in, right? But no, they're always on Streamlabs. Everyone I know uses Streamlabs other than you guys.
I use Stream Elements OBS.
There you go.
Which is just another derivative of it. But I'm strictly Vmix for my stuff, yeah.
I have OBS, I have Stream Elements OBS, I have Streamlabs OBS, I have Vmix.
Yeah, use both.
I've never used OBS in my life. I've always been on
OBS
XSplit.
You're XSplit. You're XSplit.
Always
Oh,
XSplit.
I use XSplit as well sometimes.
I briefly used it. Yeah. And then until I moved to Vmix, I didn't really touch XSplit much after that. So.
Yeah. Pure old OBS is obviously the most flexible. It's a little harder to tinker with, and but it does so much more. But you're right, Justin. If you're just going to be solo and you're not going to hook up with other people, like on your stream, then OBS Stream Elements or Streamlabs is fine. But if you're actually going to interface OBS Streamlabs and Stream Elements, it becomes a detriment very quickly.
They do. I completely agree. I think that if you're a kid out there and you want to start streaming and you want to stream your Fortnite games, Streamlabs OBS will make it absolutely unbelievably simple from point A to point B, and you just can't fail. It will make sure that you cannot fail. And it'll even give you flashy overlays you can just choose from that are free to play with. I mean, it's, it's kind of a toy in that sense. But I do agree that my second suggestion would be just basic OBS because of what it offers, and it's still free. It's pretty amazing. So.
Yeah.
And just asked the question why XSplit over OBS in chat, and I said I think the reason was I needed to figure out how I could have guys play at my table and play remotely at the same time, but see what we were doing at the table. And does that make sense? And just XSplit seemed to be the easiest one where I can just use the my XSplit camera. My camera is the XSplit camera, and then they just highlight that and they see it in live. I didn't want that delay on Twitch.
Right.
So that was the reason.
Yeah.
For me, I always went with XSplit because it's paid, and the pay gets you support that's not a forum board somewhere. It's an actual person that will fix something if you have a problem with it.
Yeah.
True.
But it's paid, which means it costs money.
Yeah, and I think for what the bracket that XSplit is in, kind of where it lies in terms of comparison to other streaming software, like a lot of them start to do more or less the same thing each one. And what you end up choosing is either cost. Realistically, what you end up choosing between is cost and or user interface, right? So that's when they start competing with each other. They do mostly all have the same technology, with the exception of OBS Streamlabs, but they have this kind of the same technology. And then what they're competing with each other on really is just price and then usability for the consumer. And I think they know that, and so it really genuinely, I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but a lot of times it's just a preference. It's some people love the XSplit look, and they may not like OBS, right? So.
Yep, absolutely. And me saying that I personally use, now that we're talking, I don't remember if it's Streamlabs or Stream Elements OBS, one of the two. That is my personal thing where if I'm I'm painting, or perhaps I created an overlay for playing a game. But so that is just me by myself as a solo.
Yeah. And it is. I think Streamlabs OBS exists in a space that just hasn't happened before they made it. Right, realistically, it is the closest thing to entry level on a streaming software, but it can go a little further if you want it to. If you want to throw some money at it, they would give you the ability to do that and make it kind of look pretty. So it's like Frank said, as soon as you want to go outside of your bubble at all, and any sort of if you want to get fancy in the way that you connect stuff and the way that you delay things and the way that you want to display stuff, hell, even really the display quality. I think OBS Streamlabs caps people at a certain bit rate. It caps people at a certain resolution, and it I think it compresses even too. So it's meant to be almost small form factor and super accessible, not robust. So it's but it's still a fantastic piece. I can't for a beta piece of software. I can't complain. So, all right.
Hopefully
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, hopefully everyone understands that there's a VTT you play with, or a tabletop we play with. There's a video communication that you connect your players with, and then there's a broadcast software that you put it onto Twitch with. So for anyone who's a complete novice, just note that there's all those aspects that you need to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
Just typing that in.
Yep.
So
that's
then
a good point.
I think, and you can tell me if you like the idea, Mick, or not, since you are the conductor here. We could kind of quickly go around. Quickly go around the horn here and talk about kind of how everyone got started and where they got to, like what their background is, right? Like I know Frank was a photographer at one point, but there's much more to that, right? So if we want to give a brief synopsis as to what got you to doing, what made you Lord Gazumba, right? What made you Praetor's Rejects? So like real quickly, before we kind of send this off into the sunset.
I love that.
Jay.
Oh, do you really want me to go with this? I've told this story 1,000 times, but I'll tell it 1,001. So, Popular Mechanics had this video of 2 minutes, longest D&D game in history. ... And it was this guy Robert Wardall. We've all heard this story before, and it was he had played for 35 straight years. And I'm like, son of a bitch, this guy, I've been playing for 38 years at this point. And this was in 2017. And it kind of, I don't know why it irked me, but we were thinking about it anyway. And I said,
I know.
I'm going to start streaming. Yeah, I'm going to start streaming my games. Seriously. And that's how it started. It started because of this. And I still get confused for this person at cons and all over the place. And we just decided we're going to stream our games. And then it led to finding the Greyhawk community and finding Frank and finding Jimmy and Will and all the other, and Carlos and all the other people that we basically have a cabal of streamers now, that we all kind of try to work together and help each other out when needed. And we have, Reaper as a sponsor, and we have a great, fantastic, just wonderful community here, and and that's what it's grown into over these last 2.5 years, and it's been a blast. And like I said, it's a beloved hobby for me, and that's where I wanted to stay. And emotional support, Josh, from you, driving you, driving Jimmy and us. Great.
No, it's not support.
Yeah, it's another story for another time. But that's where it has come from, and that may sound a little petty, but I got something. There's something that needs to spur you on, and that's what it was.
Sorry. We know each other. I laugh, and people are going, why is he laughing at him? We know each other very well.
Yeah.
We met, and I would say, because Frank said it the other day in a text to me, 2 years ago, we were going to, they were coming up to Denton, and Jay was going to come in, and we were going to drive up, and we were going to spend all weekend hanging out and having a few adult beverages and working on the shows that Frank was going to put on for Reaper. And we're still going to do that when the physical comes back around online. But the community is very dynamic and very supportive. And I give them a hard time all the time, and they give a hard time back. And it's having fun. And that's a sidetrack to what we're talking about here, but I want to make sure people understand I'm giggling over here because I'm teasing them and they're teasing me. So
yeah, it's been good fun.
I think the presentation for us and what I do, like I said, I've already said, IT for most of my life, 30 plus years of taking care of computers and companies in the small and medium-sized markets. And then I got burnt out in '98 and went to New York to film school. And lived up there for a while and got involved in the convention and for the IFC channel, and came back to Texas thinking I'm going to be a big producer, and laughed at, and so you start off at the grunt level and you work your way up. And over 10 years of doing it, met my wife, and then '08 hit. And so production was dead in the water with our movies and our scripts and all that from LA. And so I knew IT was easy I just stepped right back into it. Honestly, never really left it. Now I've been able to merge the two together in the platform and understanding of it all, and love it. And the channel evolved from that and wanting to play D&D again. I walked away from it for many years, and I came back to it. So that's my story.
For me, I'll first take a page out of Jay's notebook. I've been playing D&D for 1 year less than Jay in my campaign, which is one more year than the famous person. No, sorry. I also like to give Jay a hard time over that. It's fun. Because I understand. So I've been playing. D&D is very core to me myself. So there's no doubt I was ever going to play D&D. As to where I got to stream it, I'm a creative individual. I've been a musician since I was very young, and I played in bars and clubs and venues and all the things that goes along with that for like 13, 14 years, right out of high school. I loved theater. I love the performance mechanics of things. And I did some photography, and then I did a stint more in really trying to do photography right before I started streaming, where I was accumulating some of the gear you need to be a photographer. I'm mostly doing sports photography. And so when you throw all that stuff together, right? Live audio performances, where I've been in bands, it gives me the audio engineering background. Again, not school, this is all self-trained stuff. This theater and stage gives me more of the performative background. The photography gives me more of the video and videography background. Streaming is something I wanted to do with D&D from at least a good 15 years. Well, there wasn't streaming, but I wanted to record sessions a good 15 years ago, because after you'd get done with the game, you'd go, oh my God, this is so much fun. And you'd all chat about it and talk about it. You want to relive it. And sometimes I'm not there with the people to relive it. And I try to go back on some tape deck recording, and it was miserable because I'm spinning through 4 hours of tape recordings, which is just some sort of personal hell. So it never worked out until technology got to a point where it's up, and I actually saw people streaming a game. I think it was the very first Acquisitions Incorporated, before they were actually pre-acquisition.
Before
Penny Arcade.
Yeah.
It was Penny Arcade when
Penny
just
Arcade.
they had their little trial games that Chris Perkins DM'd. I think it was not even in the US or for US players. And I was like, wow,
Sandwich was fine.
I can do this.
You like
I can do
sandwich,
this.
Whatever.
So
Anything. I'm not picky.
we streamed it. And that's how I got to where I am. And all those things came together to make the streaming technology where they are. But I've never stopped playing D&D. That's more of a fundamental thing for me, and it is it'll always be there. Even if I get tired of streaming and I stop streaming, I'll never stop playing D&D, and I'll never stop being an extra high production person for that either. It's just always the way it's been.
Mick?
So yeah, me.
Yeah.
Sure. I guess I started off wanting to do engineering, and always had an interest in like media production and filmmaking and stuff. Engineering didn't work out. I went full.
Smart.
Yeah. I went full-fledged into the just media production. I focused predominantly on creating like cinematography and all of that stuff, but I did a background in IT as my backup, and then D&D has also just kind of, I've been interested in it since high school. I played a couple games in high school, didn't really get to do it in college, but met my husband through D&D. We play it a lot, and so it is now an intrinsic part of who I am as well. So I love streaming.
Nice.
I love technology. I love helping people make their creative endeavors real. So
Oh,
that's my
I love it.
short and simple.
Mine is actually very similar to that. It's I grew up kind of like taking apart old computers that my parents had, putting them back together, that kind of stuff. That's how I started. And then I started playing with early programming languages when I was probably 10, 12, something like that. My mom, of course, bought me like I think C++ for dummies or something like that. And I remember thumbing through it and playing around with that. So I loved the, kind of to your point, I love the engineering side of things. I loved the technology side of things until I would say I got to be about 16, 17, and I decided that I wanted to go into the RTVF program at UNT because I wanted to make movies, right? I wanted to kind of, it went from tech and an engineering obsession to movies. And I was briefly in school, and it didn't feel right to me when I was there, so I moved out of it. It just didn't feel like that's where I wanted to be, right? It wasn't what I expected it to be. Let me put it that way. So from there, I ended up kind of just working basic stuff, doing nothing to do with the stuff that I loved. Of course, I played video games in my spare time, which led to the tech obsession, which led to the, I built computers all the time. I've built all of my friends' computers, and virtually everyone they've ever had, I've built myself. And basically, I ended up, like I said, starting that film company with a buddy of mine, a roommate at the time. And that's actually when I played D&D for the first time. I was in college. So we started the film company up. I told you I sold my half of it, went back into like a kind of a manual labor job. There's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't not fulfilling. Let's put it that way. And I was there for 3 or 4 years before I started working at Reaper about 7 years ago. And the rest is history, right? I mean, I got reintroduced into film and stuff 3 years ago when Ed was like, hey, go make YouTube videos, and so I've kind of rediscovered my love from my teenage years that way, because I never expected to get back into it. Not in a practical application at least, but yeah, it's been kind of all over the place, but I'm kind of with you there, Mick. It's been an obsession with engineering, and I actually have, in my early years, trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was in an RTVF program as well as various other I joke that I've got 75% of virtually all of the BS degrees that are available. I've taken OChem, PChem. I've taken high-level chemistry courses and science classes. I've taken Calc 1, 2. I took, and I don't understand why I even did them because I'm not using them, right? I was all over the place. So it's just, yeah.
2 years of mechanical engineering, and then that didn't work out. I tried art history. I tried industrial design.
Yeah.
It was,
all over I completely get it. Yeah. But then, here we are. So.
Yeah. And so that wraps up this panel.
It does.
We're a little late, but
it's fine.
I enjoyed all the conversations, and as long as Justin said it's fine, we're fine.
Yeah, we're good.
Conversation's a good thing.
It is, absolutely. But I want to personally thank everyone who came to the panel. Thank you for the great conversation. Thank you for everyone watching, of course. You guys are always the ones that make this possible. Without you guys, we would just be doing this to an empty room, which is then gets a little egotistical and weird. But we would still do it, right? We would still put on a panel to zero people. We
absolutely would.
Yes, we would. But thank you very much to everyone who did come out, and thank you guys again. So. With that, what's coming up next is an intermission, essentially, with Brother Dave and Mr. Ed, who walked out of the room. I'm not sure where he is. But we'll do some promotional stuff, and then the next panel coming up is the art panel, the painting panel, with Michael Proctor and Jason Weeby. So, why don't you give everyone a big wave, and keep being awesome, guys. We'll see you here in a bit.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Thanks for watching.
Really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you. See you soon.